So today I am with Paul Daugherty. I'm the Chief Technology Innovation Officer at Accenture, and I'm happy to say a friend and an advisor. Paul, always good to see you.
Great to see you too, Claire.
So Paul, we've been working with you and with Accenture Labs for over a year now, and one of the things that surprises us in a good way is the fact that humanity is a big part of everything that you are doing here. And also something that you spoke about recently at Davos is the trust aspect too. How do you maintain walking your talk?
If you think about what's happening in the world right now, we're at a time where we have unprecedented power of technology that's shaping the way that each one of us lives our lives, does our work, whatever your profession is. And we're moving from a point where technology is something that you could use and set aside to a point where technology is changing us. It's changing our behavior. If you think about it that way, that's why we feel such an obligation to really think about what we call responsible innovation, which is thinking about the right way to apply the technology. How will the person's experience change with the technology? And that gets you into these issues around trust, gets into issues around ethics, gets into issues around data access, and many other issues that are really important things for us to grapple with if we want to create the right world in the future, rather than have a world that's a little bit dystopian or has consequences that we don't want as people.
So with all the travel that you're doing and all the different conversations that you're having, when you go home and you're with your family and your children, what are the questions that they're asking you? Like, Dad, what are you doing to help shape a better future for us? How do you answer that for them?
I don't think people ask the question that way. I think you get into discussions around particular uses of technology, or you see things happening on the news and you say, well, how does a data breach that you see at a big company or a Cambridge Analytica, what does that mean? What does that mean, Dad, or from a friend or colleague? And that's the type of discussions you have. It tends to be more about issues rather than the big picture. And it is impacting and touching everything we do. So it's becoming more personalized discussion. 10 years ago, the average person didn't care that much about technology and what was happening in the tech industry and all these sorts of things. They care now because billions of people, if we just crossed 4 billion people on the internet, half the world's population, we have billions of people on individual social platforms, like WeChat in China or Facebook here in the US. And we have people using devices. We have cameras all over our cities. And these things are making people aware of the benefits, but also of things you need to think about and be concerned about. And those are the types of discussions that I find myself having a lot.
When you're talking about, the importance of data and the importance of, what does that mean for people today? Do you want to expand upon that a bit?
Yeah, I'll start with identity, because identity and data are closely intertwined. We live in a digital economy, right? We're moving more and more to a digital economy. We buy online, we shop online, we search, we do social, et cetera. More and more of the economy is becoming digital. I think everybody understands that. What we've done, though, is we've created a digital economy that I worry about for the future in terms of whether we've established the right foundation. One of the things, for example, that we don't have built into our digital economy is a standard notion of identity and principles, the right principles around data ownership. If you and I were to sit down and whiteboard and design a digital economy, starting 20 years ago, we would have certainly put the rights of the individual and consumer probably at the center of our discussion, and then built an economy around that. We've done the opposite. We've evolved into a digital economy and are now questioning identity, who owns what data, et cetera. And that's a big problem, and we got to put a lot of focus on creating the right types of behaviors, the right types of solutions in the future that give individuals control of their identity, which is the most important thing, that gives everyone an identity. Right now there's over 1 billion people in the world that have no documented identity, no paper or digital identity. We need to give them an identity, and we need to give people access to all these services. And part of this is the debate about what data do you own versus what data is owned by the platforms that you cooperate with. If you use a platform for free, should they have access to your data? To date, we've got one answer to those questions in the digital economy we've built to date. I don't believe it's sustainable, and we need to change the way that our digital economy works, giving more rights to the individual and more accountability to organizations that use that data. And that's going to be the foundation of how we build a more sustainable digital economy that has a better balance between individuals and organizations.
In the old days, when they started to build bridges and buildings, no one really talked about policies and regulations and safety until they started falling on people. Right? So with issues are coming more conversations, and with conversations are more policies and thoughtful thinking is happening. So the fact that you are really looking at this, yes, it's timely, but it's also imperative for what we're actually planning for. And I don't think we used to do that so much, as you mentioned.
Yeah, the reason it's a good observation, and the reason this is important is because of the pace with which the technology is moving. You can't wait for one bridge to fall down and then develop the policy and regulation around better bridges. The technology is happening so fast that it's pervading industries, it's pervading different experiences, and we need to be ahead in understanding the implications of it. So that's why it's different, I think, than it's been in the past. The other thing is that's important is I think we need to better understand the human agency around our role in defining the future and in solving some of these problems. I hear too often organizations or people saying that, well, that's what the technology is going to do. Artificial intelligence introduces bias, so whatever the implication might be. That's simply not true. The technology only does what humans intended or what humans use it to do and implement it to do. And technology is neutral. It's what we do as people and as humans in understanding how to deploy the technology properly. So that's why we've been really working hard on these issues around responsible innovation, responsible AI, establishing the right principles in how we use and deploy technology, because it's up to us to get this right. This isn't an issue of blaming technology. It's us deciding what kinds of norms, what kinds of rules and such we want to put around the technology to make sure it serves people's needs properly, individuals, consumers, to make sure it serves the communities that we live in properly. And that's really where we are with this right now.
And I think it's not just the responsibility of leaders and tech innovators, it's also the responsibility of us as consumers to be able to learn and be curious enough to actually join that journey of change. And because if not, it's rather like today, it would be very difficult for you to hire someone who didn't know how to use a laptop or a mobile phone. We've had to adapt. So one of the things that we're enjoying working with all of you at Accenture is creating those upskilling programs. What do you think of the upskilling issue?
Yeah, you introduced a couple of things that I want to comment on. The first is the consumers and our consumers deciding what they want to do. I think that's one of the real issues. Is we've as consumers we've all decided by opting into platforms on allowing companies to access our information in certain ways, and we've made these trade-offs. And I think we have a big education process to educate consumers on what's happening as they use different services and different platforms and such, and make sure that they're making informed decisions. So I think that the consumer education around this is going to be a big issue and continue to be a big issue. In terms of upskilling or reskilling, that's what I would call the single grand challenge of our generation, of the generation we're living in right now, is can we and how do we reskill people in the right way so that everybody has the opportunity to participate in the upside of this era we're moving into. We're moving into an amazing time where technology is going to create great possibilities. We're going to solve massive human and societal issues around hunger, around climate change, around food supply chains, making our societies work better, educating people, etc., finding new drugs, improving health outcomes. I have no doubt that technology is going to do all these things, but will everybody benefit equally from it? And will we reduce inequality in doing this, or will we increase inequality in doing this? That's where the reskilling becomes important, because there will be a lot of disruption of jobs. There'll be millions and millions of jobs displaced by technology. It's been happening for hundreds of years. This isn't a new thing, but the accelerating pace of AI and other technologies will result in the displacement of a lot of people from their jobs. How do we make sure those people are reskilled for the new jobs that come? We personally believe, based on the research that we've done, is the issue isn't the shortage of jobs. It's people prepared to do the new jobs. You can see that in the stats if you look at them today. In the US, we have the same number of people unemployed as we do have open jobs. And it's a complex issue, and I think we're not making fast enough progress. And to be honest, it's my biggest concern about the future, because we already have a lot of dissension, a lot of people feeling they've been left behind in societies. That's having a lot of implications on things we're experiencing every day in different countries around the world. And it's going to get worse if we don't reduce the inequality in providing access to the skills. If there's an obligation in business to do this, and I don't think business is stepping up enough to the plate. That's one of our messages: is organizations and businesses need to step up to the plate in providing more support to their employees for reskilling, lifelong learning platforms, et cetera. It's a government responsibility. We need to shift a lot of government policy to new policies that provide people with support, not just when they're entering a workforce, but as they need help throughout their careers. We need to shift some of the tax and incentive policies to provide money, to people to get the access to reskilling they need. We need to change the educational system itself, focus on different types of education, different types of entry into the workforce, apprenticeships, and things like that. So a lot of work needs to happen. It's complex, but that's what we've got to get right if we want to address the reskilling and make sure we create that opportunity and reduce the inequality that we see.
So if you were a CEO, CTO of a large organization today, what questions would you advise people to start asking?
There's a few questions you need to ask. I think one of the things is how can you reimagine the way you do things, reimagine your organization. I choose that word imagine very intentionally because we have such amazing possibilities with the new technology that's in front of us, with artificial intelligence, distributed ledgers, quantum computing, virtual reality, Internet of Things, more and more, that you need to really look at all that and look at, what can you do differently to reimagine the way your whole business works? What other adjacent markets can you move into? How can you completely restructure the way you do things? So that's one thing, is how do you develop that, that skill around really thinking differently, moving your organization differently. Another thing is that CTOs, CEOs, leaders need to think about is their people. We've talked about that extensively, yes. But the best investment you can make in the future, the best investment you can make in technology is in the education and skilling of your broad workforce. Nobody else is going to train your workforce for you. You need to train your own workforce, given how fast the roles are changing, your business is going to be changing. And so that's a key thing to get on now, get those learning platforms in place so that you're building your own talent for the future. And the third thing I think about is the data, which we've talked about a little bit. Data is really important in all this, the sources of the data, where it comes from, how you use it. And in many cases, it'll become a competitive differentiator for companies. And you need to strategically understand the data you need, how you get it, how are you going to use it, how are you going to differentiate it, how are you going to get the right arrangement with your customers and consumers around your ability to access that information. That's something you need to get on top of right now. So those are the things I think you need to look at to start preparing yourself for a very different future.
My final question today is what are you most excited about right now?
Most excited about? That's a hard one because there's a lot of exciting things out there. I think I'm most excited about the fact that we're really moving into a new era. I really do believe we're living in a special time. When we look back on this a couple generations from now, this is going to be a time in human history when we will have seen a dramatic change and advance in terms of the way that we live, the way that we work, the way that we all go about our business and such. And it's the big change that's happening is technology is approaching more human-like ability to get things done and a more human-like ability to interact with us. And that's never happened before with any other technology. Technology's been around forever, from the axe, that was invented in the Stone Age, to the printing press, to the steam engine, to the wheel, to the transistor, to the PC, to the wheel. But those were all physical devices to some extent. We now have technology that's going to, as I said earlier, it's going to change the essence of what it means to be human. I don't think that's a bad thing because it's in our control. It's a powerful, positive thing. And the excitement for me is how do we fundamentally transform ourselves and our ability to communicate with ourselves in a positive way, so we communicate better, develop better, deeper relationships, solve, make people healthier, increase the equality in the world. Those are all problems that are within our grasp to solve. And that's what excites me, and that's why we're looking so hard at not just the technology, but at the human side of the equation, because it's how you put those two together that I think allows us to create an amazing, set of advances and an amazing new future that's ahead of us. And the technology is neutral. The technology, you can use an axe to cut your crops or to get
Make
your
a
food,
wheel.
or you can use it to kill your neighbor. The technology is neutral. It's what the people do with it. And the same is true of artificial intelligence, of quantum computing, any of these amazing new things we talk about. The other thing I think we need to factor into a lot of the zeitgeist of what's happening is, if you look back at every technology, a human tendency is to fear the technology before we accept it. I imagine this debate going on back in, way back thousands of years ago in our civilization, when somebody invented fire, and you probably had one group saying, this is great, it'll keep us warm, we can cook our food, and another group saying, this is awful, it's going to burn down our villages and kill us. And I think every technology has had that dynamic to it. And until we can envision the future a little bit better and see the applications of it, people don't get comfortable with it. And I think we're right at that precipice now with some of these new technologies.
No, I could talk forever with you. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thanks,
as
Clare.
usual. Thank you.